Elden Ring, oh Elden Ring, therefore you don't have the right, oh you don't have the right. Every time a FromSoft game comes out, inevitably the tide of difficulty options or necessary accessibility options comes flooding out. And every time FromSoft's answer is, lol, you don't know what you're talking about. Both sides have valid points, as is usually the case in heated debates like this, but let's get into the details and see why people care so much about this in the first place. Accessibility options are what they say on the tin, options that allow for wider access to media. Common AOs include colorblind modes, subtitles, and innate controller support. Getting more common are things like the removal of flashing light effects or particular sound effects which trigger conditional responses. You're removing an intended part of the experience in order to make it more playable for people with certain disabilities. But how much customization and cutting is too much? And what does developer intent really mean? And why does it even matter? If you look at a game like The Last of Us 2, you'll find dozens of accessibility options that cut against the grain of this argument. You can effectively turn off any specific type of challenge you don't want to have in the game, leaving, at the most extreme end, only an interactive story behind. On one hand, you work to remove almost any potential barrier to entry, so as many people as possible can engage with your story. On the other hand, because the game is so customizable for the purpose of accessibility, you can never guarantee that any two people who have played the game are even having comparable experiences. This then leads us to ask, why? What was even the intent behind making the game in the first place? If the developers just wanted to tell an interactive story, they could have just made the game an interactive story. A walking simulator, maybe with some interactive shooting elements, but they didn't. They designed all these mechanics into the game, placed them into the game deliberately, only to put in the option to just take them out. You can argue that the developers wanted everybody to be able to experience their game, but at that point, what experience are people even having that's worth all the trouble? And if it's just about playing the game the way you want to play it, that's also disingenuous, because you don't get the choice of playing the game in any way, you only get to experience the content or not experience the content. And deliberate work went into designing each of those mechanics, so is it even a full experience if you take them out? Developer intent is an odd thing. If you hold developer intent as king, you miss out on so much. If Warcraft 3 was only ever going to be about building a base and fighting for map control and resources, you never would have gotten Dota out of it. If Diablo stuck to its original developer intent, it would have been a turn-based 3D isometric roguelike that would have likely been a cult classic, but not the influential juggernaut that it became. So what about games without overt accessibility options? If you think a game is too hard, or don't like dying to poison, or don't want to deal with multiplayer interaction, the modern ideology idealized in The Last of Us 2 posits that you need a menu option to take that out. However, there is a counter option, also incredibly popular, that says, if you don't like it, tough, deal with it anyway. Elden Ring is the perfect counterpoint to this ideology. It includes everything in the game. No extrinsic difficulty options, only the most necessary accessibility options, but manages to give players more control over their own gameplay experience than most other games that do include these options. Everyone engages with the core mechanics in some way: the combat, the leveling, the difficulty. But the weapons you choose, the build you make, the path you take, these all provide for unique gameplay experiences. And then they come back together again by pitting these wide variety of players up against the same sets of challenges. In The Last of Us 2, you can talk to any other player about the story moments, but that's really about it, since you don't know what game mechanics they played with. In Elden Ring, ask literally anyone who's played the game what their experience of fighting Margit was like, and while you're gonna get 100 different stories, each of them is just as valid and knowable as anyone else's, because everyone was experiencing the same game. Some people can fight Margit with base equipment, taking no damage. Some people fight Margit after getting 50 levels and a weapon that two-shots him. There are routes you can take that give you access to a special item which binds him and makes him even easier to kill if you're having that much of a hard time against him. But because the game puts him right there, almost impossible to avoid, right near the start of the game, down a very specific path, almost everyone who has played for long enough will have some experience of Margit and be able to talk about that experience with anyone else who has played the game. Accessibility options aren't bad. Extrinsic difficulty options aren't inherently bad either. Heck, I only got into Fire Emblem because I played Path of Radiance on easy mode. For a brand new player, jumping into normal or hard wouldn't have been enjoyable, even if it's considered quite easy compared to other games in the series nowadays. Easier difficulties can be seen as accessibility options, while harder difficulties are for challenge and prestige. However, for example, lowering the difficulty on the hardest difficulty content in MMOs for accessibility alone defeats the purpose of that high-end content because earning the clear is a badge of honor, giving dedicated players something to work for. It's okay if not everyone experiences all the content, because that content was designed for a niche, and changing the content to expand out of the niche will destroy the niche itself. This is a small but important reason why careful consideration of these options is important. Even including these options can drastically shift the direction of a game. StarCraft Remastered's decision to keep the game engine the same alienated a ton of players, but maintained the consistent formula that has made it such a legendary competitive game. Even something as simple as increasing unit selection caps would have drastically changed how that game is played, and if the option was present, you'd be an idiot not to use it. However, there is an argument to be made that single player should have had the option, even if multiplayer did not. But even that argument comes with its own flaws, though. Mass unit selection in StarCraft 1 could make the already difficult to manage pathfinding look even worse, and having completely different options in single player creates an even higher barrier to entry between single player and multiplayer. Just because an option would be a good thing in a vacuum doesn't mean it's good for the game as a whole. I had a section here where I was going to talk about Fire Emblem's casual mode, but that had ballooned to be about double the length of this video, so I'm gonna save that for its own topic. So yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I have enjoyed Elden Ring so much. I have almost 100 hours in it, and even though I'm technically close to beating it, I still feel very far away because I feel like there's so much bonus content in this game. I love the game a lot. I totally understand that not a lot of people do. I was surprised that it sold 12 million copies because I knew that this is a game that has a specific niche. This is not a game for everyone, and it doesn't claim to be. That said, I'm really glad that it came out in the state it did. I'm really glad that so many people have given it a chance and enjoyed it. And I'm really glad that it's given me an opportunity to talk about some of these things in a way that makes sense. I've had some conversations with friends at some points in time about accessibility options, about difficulty options, and I felt that I wasn't really understanding their point, they weren't really understanding mine, and it ultimately came down to a fact of, well, we just believe inherently different things and don't necessarily believe that we can convince each other about it. That said, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like, sub to the channel if you really enjoyed this type of content and doing a little bit more discussion form, long form type content. Also, what would really help is if you shared the video around, even more so than just liking and subscribing, because if the right people see this video, it could take off. If they don't, then it just doesn't exist. That's just the way that YouTube works, is that if you get someone bigger than you to look at something, then great. If not, oh well. And if you try to promote yourself, then that's just selfish self-promotion, and then you get banned for it. So that's what it is. That's how it goes. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Till next time, this is Mithril Zenith, signing out.